Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's coffee break. My name is LaRue Brown, Senior Director for Data Solutions here at Altair, and I want to spend a few moments talking to you about how we can leverage our RapidMiner platform to work with databases. One of the key challenges with working with databases is one, users may not have the skill set to write SQL queries or scripts to extract data from these databases. Moreover, when they need to join multiple tables together or do any sort of complex aggregation, data cleansing operations, generate summary reports, or what have you, that can become a challenge. Typically, where they solve this is there'll be a DBA of some kind they'll submit a request to that individual, and they'll build out certain tables or specific views for those users. However, if there's a lot of requests coming in, it's difficult for the users to get those in a timely manner. So what we're going to walk through today is how we can leverage the RapidMiner platform from Altair to effectively give users the ability to connect to databases and fairly easily do a lot of advanced data preparation operations with databases without we're having to write specific scripts or queries to do that. As we talk about, we're going to talk about the RapidMiner platform for today. We're specifically looking at databases, but just as a reminder, this is an end-to-end data science platform. It gives you the ability to do things like data preparation, data cleansing, and data access, which we're going to touch on a little bit today. But it also allows you to quickly create predictive models, deploy those models into production in a rapid manner as well. So when we talk full end-to-end, we truly mean that, and you'll have that great flexibility leveraging the solution. So with that, let's jump right into the platform. And I want to give you a sense of how we can leverage the platform to work with databases. I'm first going to jump over to the AI Studio interface inside of our RapidMiner platform. Now, there's a few things we'll typically want to do in order to connect to a database. The first thing we need to do is establish that actual connection. As you may know, inside of RapidMiner, you can create numerous types of connections just by right-clicking on the connect field, and then you can create a new connection. I've already established one here, but let's just take a look at this quickly so you can get a sense of some of the parameters that are required for this. You can select the specific type of database. I'm using SQL Server, but we do have connectors for pretty much all the popular databases that are out there. And notice if you go into that connection section, if you're connected with a different type of service, you have the option to do that as well. But from our standpoint, we're going to select SQL Server. We'll provide our credentials, so our username and password, and the actual host ID and which database we actually want to connect to. The reason when we create this connection, we'll use this throughout our actual workflow. You do want to test the connection, make sure you can reach the actual database itself. You should get a successful message here. If you don't get that successful message, again, you might want to check and make sure you actually do have access to that database. If you do and you're still getting the error, one other thing you might want to look at is inside of the advanced section, there's an option to tell it to trust the server-side certificates. So you can just set that to true. That usually will resolve the issue, but if not, again, you can definitely reach out to us. We can assist you with that. But again, usually individuals not having access is usually the problem that we encounter. So I would definitely make sure you can access that database outside of the platform first. If so, then you should be able to do the exact same inside of RapidMiner. Okay, so now that we've established that connection, we're going to just bring this onto our design canvas. Notice this is a single entry point for that connection. I could bring in multiple of these, but a lot of times it's more efficient to just use a multiply operator. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to just select the multiply. And all this is doing for us is basically going to multiply or replicate this item so I can use it in multiple places. Benefit of that is if I were to bring in 3, 4, or 5 of these connections and I had to make a change to it, I have to go and change all 5 of those. Versus doing it this way, I can change just this individual one, and those changes will propagate down throughout my pipeline. So let's go ahead and connect our database connection to that multiply operator. Now, the first thing we want to do is actually read data from the database. Again, there's a lot of ways you can actually do this. If we were doing this in a query format, you would write a SQL query, maybe select star from a specific database, and you might have a where clause. You might even join multiple tables together and do things like that. Again, we want to try and give users the ability to do this without having to write complex queries. So instead, we give you an operator that also gives you the ability to read, write, and also update data from database. So in our operator section, what I would like to do is first just search for database. Notice there are quite a few different operators that are here. We also have some things to do like in-database processing as well. So if you have a fairly robust or complex workflow that you need, maybe a significant amount of data you don't want to load in temp memory on your machine, you might want to have that stuff processed on the actual server itself and just return the results to you. So we do have options for those. However, for today, I'll work with a relatively small data set, so I can load this directly into my machine. And I'm going to just read in the specific tables that I want. There's actually 3 tables of interest. So I'm going to bring in just those 3 different read database operators. Notice this is where that multiplication operator really comes in handy. As I mentioned before, it basically just replicates this field to the left of it and allows you to use it in multiple places. So with that, I'm going to just create a connection from the database to each of these read operators. And then for each of the tables, I want to select something directly from these. So note, you can actually write your own SQL query if you so choose, but we do offer you a query builder to make the process a lot easier. In my case, I do want to see the client information. Notice when I select this specific table, it automatically selects all the attributes for me and writes the appropriate SQL query. If I were to select individual attributes, again, it's going to modify that for me automatically. So from the user standpoint, you can just select things directly from the interface, and the system knows to automatically apply those for you. Let's go ahead and use our client table for the first one. Our second table will do similar, but I want to bring in the occupation this time. And then lastly, I want to bring in our orders. Okay. Well, now that we have all those, you notice the red indicator here has gone away, meaning that these tables are now properly filled out. We've added all the required parameters for these. So let's just actually take a look at each of these 3 tables. And we do that just by connecting them to the results port. And once I hit the run button, it'll materialize those 3 tables for me. I've already done that ahead of time, just in the interest of time for the processing here. But just take a quick look at these 3 different tables that we have. We'll have our order data from the read order section. We have our occupation data from the read occupation table. And then finally, our client information. Now you can do this for all 3, but let's just take a look at the stats and metadata for the read client table. I'm going to come to the stats section, and I want to just interrogate each of these tables. And I can see right now, the data type for each table that was brought in. I can see if there are missing values. In our case, this table looks pretty good. While there are missing values here, we do know some folks just don't have a middle name, so that's kind of expected. Similarly, for most addresses, there may not be a secondary street address name. So those are the only places we have missing values. So it looks like this is a fairly clean data set, so I don't have to do too much in terms of cleansing. I can also look and see just how the data are distributed. Specifically for the numeric ones, I can see things like min, max, and average for the values. If this is string, I'll be able to see which string is most commonly used, most frequently not used, things like that. And similarly, if it's a date range, you'll be able to see like the min, max, date, and those data sets as well. But this is a great way to just kind of first interrogate the data, see if there's any cleansing that does need to be done to your report or to your table. In our case, we don't need to do too much, but you can probably imagine one of the challenges is I need to combine these 3 tables into one. I'm looking at the client table. There's a client ID column. There's also an occupation ID. You can almost imagine I want to take this occupation ID and link it to the actual occupation. So from the occupation table, I'll have the occupation ID and the actual value of what that actually is. And then lastly, I wanted to associate the orders for those individual clients back to the table. So similarly, I'll have again a client ID again, which we saw in that first table, and I want to use this to link those together. So effectively, we're going to join 3 tables together to get one single report. Again, can be done with a SQL query, but it requires users to know how to write those queries, and then for folks to be able to maintain those. So let's show you an easy way of how we can use the Recommender platform to do that very thing. You could do it in the design view like we talked about here. I can actually just bring up the join operator and drag this onto the canvas and generate the joins there, just like we did for reading and connecting to the databases. But I think an even easier way to do that is to leverage the turbo prep. Turbo prep is a way to do some of your basic data preparation operations in a more robust manner. It makes it a lot easier for the users to understand what's being displayed on the screen and what the final results are going to be. You have sort of an Excel-like table view up front, so you can actually see the data. You can see sort of the results as soon as you run a process, and if you need to make modifications or changes, you have the flexibility to do so. So let's start off with looking at our client table. We want to take our client table and combine that with the occupation table. Remember, we're going to use that occupation ID as our joining key. And the reason I like Turbo Prep for this is because there's a fairly easy way to do that. As I mentioned, you could do other data prepper operations such as doing transformations or cleansing operations, creating your own custom functions, or even pivot tables. But in our case, I just want to merge these together. So I'm going to select that merge operator. I'm already on the client information table, so I need to just select what I want to join it to. You can see it's going to give me recommendations for the other tables that are available. In my case, we're going to select the occupation. I can then select the join type. For this, I'm going to do an inner join. I know that data coming from this database, every client that we have here is going to have a client ID, and everyone's going to have an occupation listed for them. Even if the occupation is none or unemployed at the time, there's still going to be something in that field. So I know there's not a possibility of there being missing values where I may have some values in the left that are in the right or vice versa. Or I know there's not going to be duplicate records either because each client's going to have their own individual ID. So let's select that inner join. And now I'm going to ask me what column or columns I want to use to actually join. Essentially, what is my primary and foreign keys in the table that I'm going to use to link these together with. So for my left table, remember we're going to use that occupation ID as our joining key. Now notice what will happen when I select my right table. It's going to give me a recommendation here automatically. Again, this is a smaller table, only 2 columns, but it will help the user to identify what is the appropriate key to join on. This is very beneficial for folks that are, again, not familiar with writing queries, or more importantly, if you have data coming from multiple data sets where the attribute name may not be exactly the same, but we know that's their correct value. This will help guide them to where the actual appropriate joining key should be. I'm going to go ahead and just select that. Now that I have that, I want to just run a quick preview of the table. And notice what it's going to do for me. It's going to, one, show me first what was my joining key for this table. That's going to be in purple. I'll then see everything from that left table in this blue color. That's all of our client information. And if I come over to the right, I can now see the information coming from the right table. That'll be our occupation information. So this is great, exactly what I wanted. If for whatever reason this wasn't, you can come and actually modify these attributes here. But if you are satisfied with that join, I can just go ahead and select commit, and it'll generate that new table for me. Notice now I have the full client information with the occupation. So what do we do next? I want to basically do that exact same thing again. This time I want to combine now this with our order information. And remember, our order information, we could likely have multiple orders for a given user, but again, there's not going to be a case where a client won't have a specific order. So I'm still fine to use an inner join here. However, if you do have a scenario where you may have additional records in your left table that you don't have in the right table, there's not an appropriate match, but you still want to identify those, you might want to use either left or right join, depending on the particular workflow of your table, or even an outer join in some scenarios. If I want to just get all of the matches or all of the records from both tables, and then just see where they intersect potentially. Okay, so I'm going to select my inner join. In our case, that's what we'll be fine with. And this time, again, we're going to join our data set. This time, however, we're going to leverage the client ID. And again, I'm going to select that client ID from the right table. And I can preview once again. And now I'll get a new completed table that'll show. Notice I still maintain my occupation from my original join, but now I've brought in the additional columns from our orders table. Again, if you need to modify things, you can. If you're satisfied with this, you can go ahead and just commit those changes to the merge. Notice what will happen here is when I click on our change history, I can see both of those joins are preserved here. If I need to revert back from a particular change, I do have that flexibility. So if I made an error after I run those, I will have the ability to go back and change them, of course. And if I'm satisfied with this, I can actually add this process to my model. So again, if you want to preserve the things that you've created, you have the flexibility to do so as well. Okay. Okay. So with that, that concludes sort of our portion of the demo today. So what are kind of next steps for you? If you're an Altair customer and you're working with units, the good news is these applications are available for you today. So from the Altair One Marketplace, you can actually go and leverage or download the RapidMiner AI Studio and work through some of the same workflows that we did from today. If you're continuing with our sessions, our next session will be on how we build and validate machine learning and predictive models. And of course, if you have any questions or just want additional information, you can always reach out to Alex. His email address is provided there. Alex is the point of contact for any data analytics for our aero and defense customers. So feel free to just reach out to him if you have additional questions or want to learn more about our RapidMiner platform. And with that, I thank you for your time today. Looking forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thanks, everyone.